Good morning, everybody. So today we are going to be discussing how to train for endurance events. So this is going to be good for marathons. It'll apply a little bit to ultra marathons, biking events, 5Ks, anything that's going to require endurance. Hiking a little bit too. So you can apply all of this to any type of endurance event. So let's jump right in. We have some important physiology things that go into endurance. These are the top 3 in my mind. So when we're looking at improving your endurance, one is increasing your VO2 max. And your VO2 max is fairly genetic, so it's going to be set at a certain rate already based on genetics. So if you're lucky enough to have a high VO2 max, then you can thank your parents for that. If you don't have the highest VO2 max, don't worry. We can boost it by about 10 to 20%. And if you don't know what VO2 max is the amount of oxygen that you can use. And the more oxygen you can use, the more fat you can break down. The more fat you can break down, typically the better endurance athlete you're going to be, and so on. So that's kind of VO2 max. We improve this by doing high intensity workouts. I'll explain how to do those in a little bit. The other element that's really important to endurance is your lactate threshold. So this lactic acid is produced when you are burning carbohydrates, and the faster you run, the more carbohydrates you're going to burn. And so what happens is you produce a lot of metabolites, and you need to get rid of those in order to continue exercising at the intensity that you are. So we want to get your lactic threshold up as high as possible. And the way we think about this is a glass of water. You may have seen this already before, but it's my best representation. So again, VO2 max, fairly genetic. And so let's think of VO2 max as your cup. This is your genetic potential, let's say. And then let's take a look at your lactic threshold. Naturally, for most people, it's right around 50% here, which means you can work for, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how fit you are, up to 60 minutes potentially, at your lactic threshold. And this is your ceiling for your lactic threshold. So you can't really go above that. And so through training, through doing high intensity training, which would be, I would say, a 7 or higher out of 10 as far as intensity goes, you can slowly move this threshold upwards. And this is one of the greatest predictors of performance. So if you want to get better, start working on your lactic threshold. And again, that's with high intensity interval training. So if you can get it up to here, then you're going to be a lot faster. You're going to have all of this ability rather than just down here. Now, if we look at like Olympians, their lactic threshold is all the way like up here. So they are already highly genetically gifted with their VO2 max, and then they've got their lactate threshold up super high. So that's kind of how you improve your endurance. There's a little bit more, we'll talk a little bit more about actual training for this, but that's just the concept. And next, let's look at my second thing that's most important is durability and injury resistance, because for distance runners particularly, anybody who's doing a lot of activities, there is a high injury rate with this, especially for people training for a marathon, because you're doing a lot of pounding on your feet. And so you need to be strong in order to absorb that kind of abuse, I guess. And the number one way, well, there's 2 ways to do this, I guess. The number one way, in my opinion, and the best way to do this, is to do some resistance training. So that means you're going to get in the weight room, or you can do it at home since, we are under Corona lockdown. You can get some really good strength work just at home. And this resistance, again, is building and developing your bone mass, because, again, when you are doing any type of resistance training, your muscles are pulling on those bones, and you want that stress to grow those bones stronger. It is going to be strengthening the tendons, the ligaments, so all those little things that tend to hurt when you're doing a lot of activity or really training at a high level. Resistance training is going to help you with that. So we'll make, you've made some resistance workouts, but I'll probably show you a little bit there today. And then 2 is actually doing, I'm going to call it base training. So this is easier intensity training where you're just doing the activity and getting used to it. So if you are, let's say you're not running at the moment, but you want to run a marathon or you want to bike or whatever it is, you aren't going to just jump into a really hard workout because you're going to have a bad time. You're going to be very sore. So typically what you want to do is some base training where you just start out with some easy jogging. Like the other day, I ran 20 minutes and I was very sore from it because it was my first time in a while. So just do some base training, nice and easy. This is going to get all the little things that are involved in whatever, type of, whether it's swimming, running, biking. It's just going to slowly develop all those specific things, whereas resistance training is going to get you all the general things. And then my last one, and a lot of people overlook this when we're talking about endurance training, is power. So power is speed times strength. And so I want you to think about this as your ability to fire a muscle quickly, and then this is how much weight you can move. So if power goes up, technically you are going to be moving farther per stride or whatever you're doing. Or if you're on the bike, per pedal or per stroke, you are actually going to be producing more force overall, which is going to help you go faster. So if we go back up to here and this lactic threshold idea, so you're doing your hard workouts and all this stuff, but let's say you're not doing any power. Then you train your lactic threshold up here, and that's where you're at. And again, since I'm most comfortable with running terms, I'm going to say, let's say this is 7 miles an hour that you're running at right there. Well, if you increase your power and you start training this down here, and you train this by doing plyometrics, so like box jumps and so on, what you're going to do is you are going to be increasing your ability to launch forward. And when you're running, what you're actually doing is a bunch of tiny little jumps. And so this is highly relevant because power training is going to increase your jump height. And so what happens is if you get after this plyo training, you might be able to, even if your lactic threshold won't go any higher than this, you might be able to increase the speed that you're running at. So you might be able to increase that to 7.5, which in essence is actually increasing your lactic threshold. You're just doing it, you're just increasing the speed of your lactic threshold, not your actual lactic threshold. So, and I'll show you how to throw that into a workout as well. Okay, make sure you're asking questions if you have them as we go. Let's take a look at a macro view here. We always got to do one of these. So when we're looking at endurance, one thing that you're looking at is volume. So how much are you running, or how much are you biking, or how much activity overall are you doing? And the way you want this to work is you want it to start out low because you don't want to injure yourself, and then you gradually build this up. And then let's say you're getting close to the race you want to do, you're training for a marathon, you start bringing that volume back down at the end of the year. So what I call this build-up phase here is base training. So this is just you not working very hard, just slowly getting your body ready for the amount of training that you're going to do. In my opinion, I like to just always have a base, so I always try and stay healthy. So when I do want to start training, I'm maybe somewhere around here, and then I can just start ramping up. So along with this volume, we have intensity. And now this is how hard you're working. We don't need high intensity right away, but it's going to slowly build up. And then at the end, it's going to start becoming the priority. Because as you increase intensity, this is where you get your huge spikes in fitness. And so let's call this the competition phase. So if you're only going to do one event, maybe you're training for a marathon, you don't necessarily, well, you're still going to ramp up like this, but you don't need to necessarily do other races here. You could do some 10Ks, maybe a half marathon in this competition phase. And then this right here, I call peak phase. This is where you're really spiking your fitness as high as it can go. So, all right, that's kind of a macro view. Again, let me change colors here. So down here for cardio or endurance, it's just going to be easy runs. So when I say easy, I'm talking like a 6 out of 10 or less as far as effort goes. So you're not working very hard when you're doing this. You're just kind of going through the motions, developing a good base for yourself. You could maybe throw in a few workouts, but in my opinion, not too much. I mean, workouts as in high intensity workouts. When you're doing for your strength, injury resistance, what you want to be doing resistance training wise is, again, just not super intense, but You're trying to build good musculature, good overall structural integrity. We're talking your bones, muscles, ligaments again. So, you can really do anything here. If you're a beginner, you can just do some body weight stuff, so some lunges, some squats, some push-ups, however many reps you want. Let's say 10 to 20 reps. So you're not lifting super heavy, you're just getting used to things here, getting your body ready, 2 to 3 sets of that depending on where you're at. And that's pretty good to develop that base work. As you start moving into your competition phase, the intensity is going to go up, as we can see here. And so you're still going to have your easy cardio days because that's good recovery for you. And you need to maintain some type of consistency, which I'll talk about later. So we have increasing intensity with our cardio. We'll start doing some HIIT training here. We'll start doing some tempo runs here, which I will talk about what those are in a minute here. And with resistance training, what we want to start doing is we want to start increasing the weight that we're lifting. So your reps are going to go down, so decrease reps. And what this looks like is reps are going to go to, well, you don't have to do it this way, right? But this is my recommendation if you're trying to compete at a fairly high level, is that reps go down to 5 to 8, which means you're lifting a lot heavier. So these are your reps, and you can keep 2 to 3 sets depending on who you are. You can maybe go higher than that, 2 to 3, not times 3. Okay, you get the idea though. And then near the end of this phase, remember when I talked about that power, about how you're actually jumping and you need to go farther with each little step you're doing? So then we want to increase this power. And the way we do that is through explosive movements. So you can do stadium runs, where you're just trying to have quick feet all the way up. Again, you're working that neuromuscular system and that quick reaction time. So stadium runs, try and get your foot up as fast as you can, right? Real quick. Box jumps. What else could you do? You could do lunge jumps. You can do some medicine ball stuff like reverse medicine toss, where you have a medicine ball and you're tossing it over your head like that. Very explosive movements. That's kind of the idea here. And you're just trying to build that power that you're going to need to really pop during your race for this peak phase here. So this is going to be low volume. So you're not working out, or you're not doing a whole lot of mileage during this phase, or exercising for a whole lot of time, but your intensity is going up. And that's across the board. Your intensity in the weight room is going up. Your intensity in your workouts is going up. You're doing less work overall. And that's going to really peak you to really hit your stride, I guess, and really run as hard as you can, or compete as hard as you can. I got a question here. So why would you want to lower your volume of your workouts the closer you get to competition? Great question. So the reason we bring this volume down is because you need recovery, and you need more recovery time when you get this intensity up there, because the more intensity you have, the harder it is on your body. And your body really only gets better when you are recovering, because the actual exercise is actually making you worse temporarily. And then the recovery process is what makes you better. So we need to find more recovery here, because otherwise we can work, and this happens all the time with people, especially in endurance things, because they're very type A personalities where they want to work as hard as possible. They will work way too hard because they're like, okay, I need to, give it everything I have, but they're not recovering enough. And if you're not recovering enough, you're not going to actually perform as well as you need to. So there's this saying that it goes something like, if you want to have good workouts, like focus on your recovery, not on your workout. So if you take your recovery seriously, get the sleep you need, eat the amount of calories you need, then your workouts, your high intensity workouts will just happen. So sometimes we think I got to go as hard as possible. I got to work out super hard. When in reality, it's like I need to recover as much as I can. So you can kind of change that mindset a little bit, especially when you get to the end here. So this is kind of your time to really be working. You're going to be breaking down quite a lot, and then you kind of take a little breather, and you're like, all right, now I've done most of the work, and so now I just need to compete. Also, speaking of that, this is what we call a taper right here. And so what you're doing is you are bringing that volume down, and you're getting really rested. It takes a while for endurance benefits to hit you. So we're talking like 10 to 21 days for those benefits to hit you. So if you did a really heavy workout, I think in 14 days, you're going to get about 70% of the gains from that workout. After 21 days, you're at like 90% of the gains. And those might be slightly off, but they're fairly close. And so once you're like a week out, you need to do some workouts to keep your neuromuscular system fresh and quick. But in reality, you're not going to be making huge gains from doing all that heavy workload cardio. So you're just trying to sharpen up during that phase, because if your final event is right here and you're still working out super hard during this time, you're missing your peak, because your peak is going to be over here from that fitness you're doing, and you're going to be fatigued right here. So you want to, my tapers, I like to do it 10 days out, or 2 weeks, but my last really hard workout is 10 days out, and I start bringing it back before then. So a couple more questions here. Would you want to be competing in the competition phase or in the peak phase? So it depends. If you're gonna train for, it depends what you're training for. So for most people running road races, they don't have a long competition phase. This is really for like track athletes or whoever, where they have like a full season, right? And then you have your championship season. So if you're just training for like a marathon and that's your only race, what I would do during this phase is maybe do some 5Ks or 10Ks, and those will work as workouts as well. So you can do those. It's a good workout, kind of get your, keep some motivation going, so you're not just training all the time. So you can work those into that workout. So it depends. How long should the competition phase last? Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so in my opinion, and I actually have this lined up over here that I was going to kind of break down how to build up your mileage if you're running, but this goes for biking and everything. Again, my brain just works really well in running phases. So if you're really trying to compete at your highest level, in my opinion, this whole phase needs to be 20 weeks. And then you need to take some significant time off, because that's a long time to train. And in my opinion, you should take 2 weeks fully off and then another additional like 2 weeks of light activity to come back. So if we break that down, you only have about 12 weeks of benefit from working out at a high level. More than 12 weeks, people start to break down and their gains start to level off because of those genetic limits and so on. So 12 weeks is kind of how long I would do this competition phase. And again, your peak phase right here, this line is 2 weeks. So maybe 10 weeks, but that's really long. You have to be really fit to be able to survive for 10 weeks of high level training. So you can shorten this to 6 weeks, right? And that would give you an 8-week phase there. And if you're going to do like a 12-week training phase for whatever race, maybe you're just doing a 5K, you do 4 weeks of base training, 4 weeks of slowly building up. Oh, you can't see that. So base training, 4 weeks of starting to integrate workouts into your life, and then you got 2 weeks of hard workouts, and then 2 weeks of taper. And that's what most people need right there. So that would be a 12-week workout. If you're getting really serious, a 20-week training plan is what I would suggest. So great question there. How close to your competitions should you start tapering for your workout? So yeah, like I said, I get rid of my long run 2 weeks out, or my longest run, which I'll explain in a little bit. And so I would say 2 weeks to 10 days is taper. How often should you be recovering after a competition versus a regular workout? Hold that question, and I'm going to get back to that in a little bit here. Is it possible to know your genetic VO2 level? Yes, it is. So where did my sheet go? Over here is, again, that VO2 max limit. We can actually measure this in the performance lab. That is one of my jobs that I do. The protocol for that is you come in, you can do it on a bike, a treadmill, whatever you want. We can't do it in a pool yet, but we may get that technology soon. Basically what we do is we hook you up to this mask, and we run you through a progressive workout. So you get on the treadmill, let's say, and you start at a really low effort, and we're just working you through the systems. Let me bring this up here. So what I do when I create this workout is I try to start you at a 1, so you're working very, very easy, maybe a 2, and then every minute we bounce up to a 3, to a 4, to a 5, to a 6. Once you pass the 6, this is where you're going to start working hard, and then basically we keep bumping you up until you fail. And we work you at your highest capability, right? And then what we're doing is we have a mask hooked up to you. We're measuring your oxygen and your CO2. We can tell how many carbs you're burning, how much fat you're burning, and then we can tell how much your VO2 max is. So yeah, we can test it, and then you can somehow develop, you can look at these numbers and develop some training paces from it. In my opinion, this perceived exertion works just well, or just as well for the most part. So if you're working at a 7 or above, that should get you to where you want to be. So I'll show you some workouts for that in a little bit here. Okay, and what about something year-long, like baseball, where you need to be ready, strong every day? Basically, do you stop after 20 weeks or keep going? Yeah, great question. So I would, if it was me training year-round, which is how we do it in cross-country as well, if this is your 20-week cycle here, then I would take 4 weeks down, and then you can start another 20-week build. So you don't want to be maintaining this intensity all the time. So if I extended these past 20 weeks, let's say, then what you're going to do is right after your competition, your volume is going to go to 0 basically. Your intensity is going to go to 0. And now you're just taking care of your body because you've been beating your body up quite a lot. And then you're just going to slowly start building up, right? And same with your intensity here. I guess that's probably even going to be lower. And then you just go through another one of these cycles. So in my opinion, you can do 2 of these cycles per year with a month off. And it's not a full month off. You're talking like 2 weeks off and then 2 weeks of lightly active. So that's kind of how I would cycle for pretty much any sport, like a full 2 weeks off and then 2 weeks of bringing it back. So that'd be 4 weeks, 2 months off a year. For high-level athletes, that seems to be the key zone there. What about collegiate athletes that are supposed to be training all year round? So same thing, yeah. So you shouldn't be training. You can't maintain that all year round because, I mean, at a high enough level, it's just you need real recovery time at some point because it's just not healthy to do that year round. So you still want these down cycles and these up cycles to be able to recover, grow stronger, because if you do this and you actually recover here, your next cycle, because you've already developed some of your systems and you got more strength and everything, you're gonna be able to peak a little higher next time, and that'll probably occur up until your 30s, and then as you get older, you're gonna start losing your ability to do this. So if you take that full recovery time off, these cycles are going to be better, they're going to be larger, and you're going to make more gains overall. So good questions. Okay, so when we're talking about building up during this base phase here, because we had a lot of questions about that, this is a 20-week cycle. I got down to 20 days there, but what you're doing is during your base phase, let's do a 4-week base phase here, just for somebody starting out. Maybe you're going to run a 5K or something. So, and let's think about how far you should be running per week. So I'm going to think in miles per week, although I do like to think in time of events. So, I got one question real quick. I need to talk to your coach. Well, people disagree with me. So I can't say I'm always right, but that is my opinion, and I'm pretty confident in that opinion. So, hook me up with him. I'll give him a talk. So, okay, let's say you're doing a 5K run, and when you're building up your mileage, you don't want to get too aggressive. So it depends who you are. If you're a track runner, I would probably start at like 25, 30, something like that. That's quite aggressive for most people, though. They're not going to be running 20 miles a week right away. So if you're down here running 5 miles a week, that is perfectly fine. You just want to slow down that buildup. So you don't want to go up too quickly. At some point when you're building up, let's say you get up to 12, you want to take little down weeks so that you can recover a little bit before you bump back up. 14, 12, right? 16, 14. You can get as fancy as you want. But when you're progressing, and this can be in minutes too. So if you're on a bike, right, maybe the first week you work out for 2 hours, all right? And then 2.5 hours. And that's total hours per week. Let's say 3 hours that week. And then maybe that's a lot for you, so you bring it back down. So it's all about progressive build up there. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this. This isn't very relevant for a lot of us. Maybe I'll make a future video about how to progress your mileage. But that's getting a little more specific than I want to get right now. So let's take a look at some endurance activities here. So one of your main workouts is going to be your aerobic recovery. So this is low intensity. We're talking 5 out of 10 or lower. So you're not working very hard for these activities. This could be like a if you're just starting out, this could be like a walk-run day where you're going out for 20 minutes and you're going to run when you feel like it, and you're going to walk when you don't feel like it, and you're keeping that intensity fairly low. So maybe when you're walking, you're at a 2 out of 10, and then when you're running, you're at a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Just some nice easy stuff. Some people do this continuous, so if you're a little more advanced, you might go for an hour bike ride. But you got to stay within your limits when you're doing this stuff. This is mostly just for recovery and to maintain your mitochondrial density. So I have this down here. One of the most important things when you're training your endurance system is consistency. So the reason for that is one of the adaptations you're creating is you're developing mitochondria, right? And these are the powerhouse of the cells. And so this is your density of mitochondria. The more you have, the better off you're going to be in terms of endurance events. And what happens is you start building these up. They really spike right away, and then they start to level off. So this is about 4 weeks. 4 weeks, you can still go up from there, but 4 weeks is a pretty good time frame to really get your full mitochondrial density. Of course, not always 100%. Now let's say, and this is one of the reasons why staying durable with that strength training is so important, is you need to be consistent, because if you take 1 week off, let's say this is a week later right here, your mitochondria are going to really take a hit. So they're going to dip down. And if you keep taking time off, they're going to keep going down, right? And that first week, you lose a lot. So instead, let's say you took that week off and then you start training again, it's going to take you a while to get back up there. So what you want to do instead, if you get injured, is find some way to cross-train if you can. So let's say you have to take 2 days off from an injury. So you go like that, and then you get right back up there. So the less you dip, the quicker you can make that recovery. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to stay healthy and consistent, because the person who takes their time training, doesn't overdo it, is in the long run going to be way ahead, because if you have to take this time off, it's going to take you extra time to build up. So that's kind of the reason to have these easy days in there. And when we're talking about easy versus hard, and that's going to come into play when we talk about HIIT and tempo workouts, is your ratio ideally is going to be about 80% easy cardio. Let's go over here. Easy cardio, and about 20% of intense cardio, or HIIT training, whatever you want to call it. Intense cardio. So if we think about this in a week, this is about 2 days, maybe 1, maybe 2 days. I would say 2 is all you need really for that, for most people. If you're elite, you could maybe go to 70% easy, 30% intense, but that's quite intense for most people. They can't maintain that for too long. So this is kind of your golden zone right here. So if you're running 10 miles a week, let's say, 8 miles of that should be easy, and 2 miles of that should be hard. So with your HIIT workouts, these are going to be your most important thing, because it's spiking that lactic threshold. Where did my sheet go? Well, I lost my sheet. But that lactic threshold that we talked about, HIIT training and tempo runs are going to be primarily training that. And that means you're going to be exercising at a 10 or a 7 out of 10 or higher. So let's take a look. Again, we've looked at HIIT training, but your first HIIT training sessions, I really like this breakdown. So we got 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, or even a minute easy, because sometimes, that's not enough rest. So 30 seconds rest here, and then on. So 30 seconds hard. That's a really good way to get started. You can build these HIIT workouts up to be quite intense. If you're really training at a high level, and I don't recommend this for most people, you can go 5 minutes hard or on, as I say, and then maybe 2 minutes off or 4 minutes off, however you want to do it. That times 4 is a very difficult workout. So that's not for your average bear, but 20 by 1 minute, again, very high intense workout there with maybe 2 minute rest. That's a lot of work. So for most people, I'd break that down into like 8 by 1 minute, and 1 minute rest, whatever you want to be for rest. The higher the intensity, the longer the rest. So that's a good rule to have. If you're at a 9 out of 10 for this workout, you might want to take 2 minutes rest there. So you can get as creative as you want. Do it on hills, however you want. As long as you're working hard, as long as you're spiking your heart rate, you're going to be getting benefit from that. I think sometimes people put too much stock in the pace they're going or something. You can measure this with heart rate too, but in my opinion, 7 to 9 out of 10 is going to be just fine. All right, the next one is tempo runs. So these are at a slightly lower intensity. I would say a 6 to a 7 out of 10. And the point of a tempo run is to stay right around that lactic threshold. So let me draw out that glass again here. So again, that's your genetic potential. Say your threshold is right about here. And what you're doing then with these runs is you are running for your workout right maybe below this line, maybe right above this line, but you're staying right as close to this line as you can as in terms of intensity. And the way this is going to look is that you can, if you're moderately trained, you're going to be able to hold that intensity for about 20 minutes. So it's very difficult to do these workouts. You got to stay focused because you got to hold a fairly high intense pace for quite a while. So again, this is primarily for your endurance athletes. If you're doing something like baseball or less endurance-y, this HIIT training is probably going to serve you better than doing these tempo runs. But if you're training for a marathon or something, this is really good specific training to train you how to hold an intensity for quite a while. I mean, if you get really good, you can work this up to 40, 45 minutes, but that's quite advanced. And so what this workout would look like is you go out, you do a 10-minute warm-up, and then you decide you're going to run for 2 miles, 3 miles, or 20 minutes at a certain intensity. So you could say 7 out of 10. You could do a heart rate if you have a heart rate monitor. Anything above 160 is typically going to be that zone, although everybody's a little genetically different there. Or you could go off of a pace. So, when I was running track, this would be 5:20 per mile. But for some people, it might be 8 minutes per mile. I train this older lady. She's like 80 years old. I train her for marathons. And, she does these at 10 to 12 minutes per mile. So whatever you got to do, find your own level. It doesn't matter where you're at. Just really good workouts to train you for those marathons, half marathons, and so on. Another element that I want to talk about here is long runs. So this kind of is going to increase your ability potentially to burn fat. I used to be all about a long run every single week, but now I think that a long run should be every other week. So one long run, or long bike, long event, whatever you're doing, once every 2 weeks. So I'll just say 2 weeks, because it takes a lot of recovery and it is a lot of wear and tear on your body. And personally, I would rather spend my time in the weight room getting durable rather than just running for a long time. This is an important workout, but in my opinion, it's becoming less important. So if you're running a marathon, obviously you need to be doing this because this is going to increase your durability to be able to run for a long time and get everything ready. But I don't think it needs to be your main focus. So every 2 weeks I believe is good enough in my mind. And then when we're talking about this taper over here, I do my last long run 3 weeks out, like my real serious long run, 3 weeks out from there, just so that I am not tired or worn down or anything like that. And for distance on this, it's going to be different for everybody. For some people, 40 minutes is going to be a long run. For other people, 2 hours is going to be a long run. I don't see a whole lot of reason to go over 2 hours unless you're training for ultra marathons or Ironmans or something like that. That's just my opinion personally. Some people will disagree with me, but some people like to do 4-hour bike rides or whatever. And if you're not training for an event that long, I don't see any need to do that. For marathons, because this is a good point, some people have this idea that if I'm going to do a marathon, I need to be running at least a marathon distance before I do the marathon. I disagree with that. I don't think that's important, especially if you're running your first marathon. The point is to run a marathon, so why would you run a marathon before you actually run the marathon, right? Same with half marathons. If you're going to run a half marathon, I think 10 miles is a good limit to set. Because what I always see is when you have really good, like highly trained endurance runners, they're doing like 2 to 3 hours for their long runs, right? Maybe more, but that's kind of their limit. And they can run quite fast, right? So they're gonna do maybe a marathon in 3 hours, right, for practice. And they're going to run a marathon in like 2 hours and 20 minutes. So maybe even faster. But then I see people who are just trying to run their first marathon, and they're out there running for 4 to 5 hours for their long runs because it takes them that long to get 20 miles in. And, you know, when you think of it in terms of hours, these people are working harder than the most elite runners out there. And that shouldn't be happening. So I think you want to max your long runs right around here. And one more thing about this that I didn't actually put on this sheet, but you want to have some speed elements as well. And so the way I work that in is I do strides. So your HIIT workouts can be speed, right? If you're going for 30 seconds, that's like a 200-meter run for some people, maybe shorter for others, maybe a minute, right? This is going to be working some speed because you don't need to be super fast for a lot of endurance events. So what I like to do here is maybe do 2 to 3 little sprints, and you just slowly build up your speed, and you want to stay relaxed when you're doing this. So, you know, you're not at an all-out sprint, but, you know, you start out at like 40% of your max speed, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then back off right before you finish. So you want to be nice and relaxed, train yourself to run fast while relaxed, and then just build up that quickness. And you do that on your easy days. So I'm going to lay that out for you guys in 1 second. Let me go to the chat here. We got some questions. So, should an athlete training at a high level like this have rest days? Yes, and I'm going to show you that right now. So, let's bring this sheet in. I'm also going to need a separate one. So, the way I like to set up my weeks for endurance training is Monday, I like to do an easy day. And actually, because I've been teaching a lot on Mondays, I've been taking Mondays off. So, Mondays, in my opinion, is a recovery day. And easy, again, is looking at these aerobic recovery days. And this is kind of the base. So easy is relative, right? But a 5 out of 10 or lower, because you're just maintaining your mitochondrial density, trying to get a little bit of slight gains, but not working too hard. So when I say easy, this could be a 10-minute run for some people or a 10-minute bike. For others who are highly trained, it could be a 60-minute run. So 60-minute bike, an hour-long event. So it just depends the level that you're at. But just a nice easy day, even off if you want. And then on Tuesdays, I would do HIIT training. So some type of high intensity workout where you're going to need some recovery. And I would also throw some weights here, especially if I was training at a high level. I would throw a lift in the morning before I do this workout, and a fairly high intensity lift. Obviously, if you're just beginning, Okay, let me scratch this. I'm going to make a base training day for you here. So let's say we're going to talk in miles because that's a little bit easier for me. So let's say you do an easy run here of 2 miles. All right, Tuesday, let's say you take Tuesday off. Wednesday, you do another easy run of 3 miles, let's say here. Thursday, easy 2 miles. Of course, these can scale fairly high as you get more into it. Friday, let's say you take Friday off. Saturday, you're going to do a longer run. Again, long runs are fairly easy. We're talking like 5 out of 10. You don't need to work super hard on these because you're just building a base. So maybe you're going to go 4 miles there. You want to slowly build up your miles, right? And then Sunday off. So that's a perfectly reasonable schedule for somebody who's training for a 5K or slowly building up to a half marathon or a marathon. Obviously, you need to start building these miles up as you go, but you don't want it to be too quick. It depends who you are and where you're at. So as you start moving into heavier training, and this is going to be like a more elite, I guess, style workout, you do some HIIT training. So you can do that 6 by 30 seconds to start. Maybe start working towards 20 by 30 seconds hard. That's quite a lot. But, high-level athletes are going to do that. And then you're doing a pretty heavy lift there as well. And then you want to recover from that. So I would do a lighter lift the next day and then take another easy cardio day. You could even take that day off if you want, depending on, if you're on one of these schedules, you might want to take this day off. So you'd lift, do your high intensity day, lift again, take the rest of that cardio day off. Thursday, you're back to easy cardio, maybe 20 minutes who knows? You're going to have to develop how long you want to go for there. But I really encourage you to think of your endurance training in the terms of minutes rather than miles, because with miles, it's easy for me to think about down here because I kind of have an idea of minutes, but minutes are more applicable to the human body than miles are. And it remains constant no matter how fast you are. The time is kind of the same. So then Friday, what I would do is I would do another HIIT training, and I would actually do this lift here too. So another hard lift, another HIIT training day. And then Saturday, we would do that long run, whatever it's going to be. And then Sunday, I like to take at least one day off, so I'm going off on Sunday. So I talked about that speed element. If I was going to add some strides to this, or 2 or 3 sprints, I would do them here. So we do some sprints here, because you're just doing an easy day at the end of your run. Once you're warmed up, you just do 2 or 3 100-meter sprints, 20-second sprints, just to kind of open up your body there. And then I'd maybe do them here as well. And so that's going to be right before your Friday. So you're getting 2 days of sprints, you're getting 2 HIIT workouts in, you're getting a long run in, and then you're getting 2 to 3 days of easier recovery with an off day, and then 3 lift days. So this is quite intense, and if you want to back this off, again, you just decrease these easy days. You decrease those a little bit, so you don't need to do, that 5 by 4 minutes hard, right? You do more like 6 by 1 minute hard, 2 minutes easy. You just back it off a little bit. Your lifts, I really like where those are at. You're doing 3 lifts per week, and then you got this full recovery day off. Maybe you got 2, maybe you got 3 recovery days off, depending on who you are. So that's kind of how I would set that up. Yep. Okay. Let's go to the questions, and then I will see what else I need to tell you guys. So, for people training for ultramarathons or Ironmans, would it be more beneficial to increase the time spent on each of these types of training, or the intensity of each? Let me read that again. So, for people training for ultramarathons or Ironmans, would it be more beneficial to increase time spent on each of these types of training, or the intensity of each? Okay, so both. But in my opinion, intensity is greater than time spent. So you don't want to increase the intensity of your easy days. And that actually brings up a really good point. So I'm going to rewrite this here in a different color. So we're just going to say easy, HIIT with lift, and then this is going to be easy or off down there. Easy, lift plus HIIT, long, and off. Okay, so we have this kind of layout, and what you want to think about when you're setting up your program is you want to have easy days and hard days. A lot of people used to try to train hard every single day, and it turns out they didn't get as good. And the reason for this is we have inflammation cycles. And so what happens is, well, first, inflammation is kind of a signaler for your body to become stronger and improve. So we do want some levels of inflammation. So what happens here is your inflammation is low, and the point of your workouts is to actually increase inflammation, because when you recover from that inflammation, that's when you're becoming stronger, becoming better, more fit. And so you do this workout here, you lift, which is pretty hard, and then you do some HIIT training, which is fairly difficult, and your inflammation starts to spike. And your inflammation is going to peak about 24 hours out from your workout. And so what I like to do is I like to do this lift, which is intense, going to bring inflammation, this HIIT training, which again is going to do the same, and then another lift, which is going to still be that intensity. But we're getting all of this intensity in one little cycle here. And if you think about this, this is about a 24-hour cycle to this, because if you lift at 8 a.m. here, you lift at 8 a.m. here, it's 25 hours. So you're doing a lot of work in 25 hours, spiking that inflammation, and then you're going to start recovering on your way down. So this is going to be recovery down here. This is going to be recovery. And then all of a sudden, you hit another workout here, right, once you've recovered. So then you're going to start spiking up again. And then, like so, the long run is going to add some more inflammation to your body. And then Sunday, you're going to start coming down, recover, and then you're back to Monday. And so for most people, a 2-peak week is about all you can recover from. And so we want to have this hard session, then easy, easy recover, hard, easy, easy recover. So that's a really important concept. Thanks. That's a really good question. Okay. What would a schedule for an elite athlete look like? All right. So what I would do for a high-level athlete, I'm going to actually get my pen out here. Where did my pen go? Oh, we're losing my stuff. All right. So high-level athlete, what I would do is a 60-minute run here. For an elite athlete at the speed they're going, this is going to be 8+ miles. Hopefully we can see that. So this is just an easy day for an elite athlete. 60 minutes isn't a whole lot of stress for them. And I mean, it's actually this workout, but I'll kind of show you again. So here's going to be a lift and a heavy lift. So we're talking, if you're in your competition phase and really ramping up before the end of the season, you're going to be lifting for probably an hour and a half, doing high weight, low reps, and also combining that with some power. So some broad jumps, some box jumps. It's a very intense workout there. And then I would do that HIIT workout. And again, if you're in your peak training phase, you're probably going to be doing like 4 by 1 mile, especially if you're like a marathon runner, maybe even 5 by 1 mile at who knows how fast, right? 5-minute pace, 5-minute mile. Obviously, if you're more elite, you're going to be going faster. I mean, some guys can be doing this at like a 4:40 per mile pace. So very tough workout. You're probably taking 3 minutes or longer for rest there. And then I would follow this workout up with another not as intense lift, but just a general lift, maybe only an hour-long session there. And you're just kind of doing a recovery lift, but you still want to get a third lifting day in. And this is kind of like your lighter day. So you might do some smaller things rather than doing the big heavy lifts. You're just going to take care of like some small things to make sure you're structurally sound, right? So doing some calves, maybe some anterior tib, just some nice easy stuff there. And then that afternoon, you're going to do another easy run, 60 minutes, 1 hour. Again, nice and chill. That's going to be recovery for elite athletes to be running 60 minutes. For a lot of people, that's not going to be recovery, right? So you got to be aware of that when we're copying elite workouts. Thursday, another easy day, 60 minutes. Oh, I also forgot. You're going to be doing probably 4 sprints this day. And then you're going to do 4 sprints this day. And then on Friday, we have another heavy lift, right? Probably an hour and a half in the weight room. Lots of power, lots of strength. You're going to be very tired. You're going to be feeling this Saturday morning, right, on that long run. So this is going to have some crossover to this. You're going to be very sore that next day. Same with this. That's why we have an easier lift, because you're going to be sore from all this work on Tuesday. And then what I would do here is a tempo run. So it's a lower intensity than this HIIT training. This HIIT training is probably going to be a 9 out of 10 for an elite athlete. And then this is going to be a 7 to 8 out of 10. And what you're going to do probably is a 40-minute run at about 5:20 pace. Again, elites might even be under 5 minutes for that. And you're just going to hold that pace solid for a long time. Again, that's a very advanced workout. You might even do sprints at the end of this day. If it's coming up to the end of the season, do 4 by sprint there. Saturday, I'm doing a long run of 2 hours, depending on your event. If I'm training for like an ultra marathon, I might go out for like a 6-hour hike, and I'd only do that every other week though. But for marathon runners, you might even go up to 3 hours if you're training for a marathon. Sometimes people will combine this tempo into this long run. That's more of like a marathon specific workout. So this is training for 10K, 5K marathon at a fairly high level. And then some people might disagree with me, but on Sundays, I always want to take a full rest day. I think by taking that full rest day, you get this inflammation cycle in check and you're feeling a lot better. And so you can hit the next week hard. So again, focus on your recovery, because if you're recovered, your workouts are going to be a lot easier. They're going to happen a lot better. So that is how I would train, let's say, somebody who's fairly elite, if that answers that question. All right, good. So do we have any other questions, any other thoughts, Any other thing that I should be explaining? We've already created a lot of these workouts, so I think you have a fairly good grasp of that, but that's kind of how I would lay out a training session. All right, I don't see any other questions, so that's all we have. Thanks for stopping by. I'll chill for another 2 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But other than that, I will see you guys at the next video.